everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Good. I literally cannot remember the last time we recorded a podcast together. It's been way too long. We figured, well, better do it now. I mean, it's been hours, and so we better come up with some excuse. And luckily, Ohio State provided us just that excuse on Friday morning.
Yes, we finally got to talk to a couple of players. Captains Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback, in case you have forgotten, and defensive end Jonathan Cooper, back for another year. And so it was good just to finally touch base with some players. We got to talk to Gene Smith and Ryan Day the other day, and now finally we're getting into the meat almost of fall camp, a little bit before fall camp starts. And so it was good. Before the festivity started, SID Jerry Emig said that they'll be on the practice field today, meaning Friday. But really, I think as we talked about on the last show, whenever that was, that there's going to be no real physical contact until September 30th when the antigens and all of that are in-house and they can do all the daily testing. But still, Tom, I don't know if you got the same feeling I did from just watching Justin Fields and Jonathan Cooper in the Zoom meeting. They seem kind of excited about getting back on the practice field and having something to play for.
Yeah, it was very, very apparent that yes, their interest in playing a season did not stop when the season was announced. That turns out they still want to play a season, and it was they were asked a whole bunch of questions about what the last couple months have been like, and whether they thought their various opportunities to try and change things, whether they thought those were actually going to pay off. But of all the answers we heard, I thought the most interesting one was from Jonathan Cooper, who was talking about how you know they've done so much and they've fought so hard and they've had so many different avenues they've pursued to make this all happen. But if they don't follow through and do what they're supposed to do this fall, like, well, it's all kind of been a waste. Like I'm trying to find the exact quote right now, but it was very much like, well, it's great that we've done everything and that they'll get to play, but they still have goals. And if they don't have their goals, then, all the things that they've done and Ryan Day has done and the parents group has done and Gene Smith has done and Christina Johnson has done, they have to finish the drill now. You gotta see it through.
Yeah, one of his quotes about it was, everything that they did for us would be for nothing if we don't take care of business. It's a very Herb Brooksian viewpoint on life. I'm imagining Ryan Day talking to the team. It's like, if you lose this, you'll take it to your blanking graves. And I'm sure it's probably not to that level, but it's clear that that's how Jonathan Cooper feels. That's clear. I'm sure he's not alone in how he feels about this season. And he said that several times. If they don't follow through on what they all want, then it's almost like they'd be letting everybody else down as well, letting everybody who fought for it. And speaking of people who fought for it, Justin Fields was asked, do you think your petition had an effect? And he said, yeah, I think it had an effect. I don't think it was the only thing that had an effect. And then he added, even if it didn't, I don't care. We're playing. And that was the sentiment as well, where it's like, yeah, all of that is now behind us. We're playing, so let's move forward. And I know everybody was wanting to talk about the process to get here, and there is a lot to talk about there. But it's a quick switch to flip when it's like, okay, we won, and now let's go do the thing that we were trying to win. And this is just the first step of that. And now they move forward in kind of baby steps now until they are able to practice fully. And I think what Justin Fields talked about, they did some 11 on 11 earlier in the week, and it was the most fun he's had in a long time. Even though he didn't play particularly well, it was just good to get out there with everybody, because as we've been saying, it's mostly been 7-on-7 with no direction in sight. And now that they have that direction, man, they beeline for A to B, 4 to 6, A to B towards that final goal.
Yeah, there is not much question where the focus is. The focus has been very much on the quote unquote we want to play movement for the last few months. Now that they're getting a chance to play, like this is not, sometimes you hear about the politicians who get elected for an office and it's like the dog who caught the car and it's like, oh, I've wanted this for so long. Now what do I do with this? That is not the case with this team. Like, okay, they have caught the car. They know what they want to do. They have gotten what they wanted. Okay, great. That's step one. Justin Fields said that it's definitely going to go down in the history books how the team fought to get a season played. But he said if they win a championship, they deserve a 30 for 30. So, and you know what? Probably not wrong. I mean, this is something that you have really not seen before in sports, that a team really had to fight like this to play, for the opportunity to play. And, there were a million interesting storylines going into the season back in February before any of this started. There was a whole bunch of interesting narratives that I think we were sort of tracking, and both from an individual and a team perspective. And all of those are still in play. And now you also have this whole thing on top of it. It is shaping up to be a really, really interesting season. And I think we're going to have some interesting stuff to write about. That's kind of my thought right now.
Tom, you mentioned no other team has had to fight like this. I would disagree. You had the bad news Bears
Mm-hmm.
in a situation in Houston
Mm-hmm.
where their game had kind of run over a little bit between, I believe, a doubleheader, and the players had to fight to get that game in. Their manager fought for them. The crowd fought for them, turned the tide. Very similar to what has happened here with the Buckeyes, and maybe the outcome will be the same. And it was just good to hear people in good mood, because it's you don't we haven't heard so much of that from anybody, just in your personal life, this last 6 months or whatever. How often are people in just in outstanding moods, and that's that Justin Fields and Jonathan Cooper were as well. And Jonathan Cooper was asked, when you found out, what was it like? And he's like, he told his mom, and he didn't really go too much into that because I kind of wonder maybe he wouldn't have been able to, where it's such an emotional thing. And this is a guy who came back for this year, had it taken away, which had to be crushing. And then you don't even know, what do you do? Do you play in the winter and then play next year, or do you play next year? Do you just see what the NFL thinks and go that way and just give up college? And now all of those what ifs are out, and now he's in full control of what he can show everybody. And I just, the relief, the excitement, the appreciation that these players have for this second chance. And I'm sure the Buckeyes aren't alone in this. It's the rest of the Big Ten, just the having this second chance, having it taken away from you, and then fighting to get it back, and then getting it back. It's hard to imagine this group of Buckeyes taking any of this season for granted, especially not knowing if each game is even going to be guaranteed.
Right. Yeah. I don't think focus is going to be a real issue this year. Justin Fields was saying that Jonathan Cooper got up and talked to the team, I guess, presumably earlier this week, about the fact that they're here to graduate and they're here to play football. And that, small sacrifices about, not going to parties, not hanging out with other people, like, yep, this is all stuff that is worth it for the, the ultimate reward, which is that they want to play for a championship. They want to play and they want to play for a championship. Focus was not going to be an issue. We have no indication that focus was an issue at any point earlier in the year. I mean, they have been about as locked in as they can possibly be. And you've seen that with the guys coming back, Sean Wade coming back, Wyatt Davis coming back, coming back in January, and then coming back again now. And, it's easy to kind of roll your eyes at the brotherhood talk and all of that stuff. And, as soon as there's a loss, it's like, okay, some of that stuff can fall pretty flat. How sacred is the brotherhood if you can lose by 3 touchdowns at Purdue? And, that's a fair question. But when you see guys who are turning down the opportunity to play for millions, for the opportunity to go out and play another year at Ohio State, and to try and right the wrong of, what happened against Clemson last year in Glendale, Arizona, it's a little more, like, okay, yeah, it's more than just words, and it's more than just just sort of empty phrases. And I mean, you've seen that with Ryan Day. Ryan Day's catchphrase is fight. Well, I don't know how many people or coaches or organizations or universities have fought harder than Ohio State has in service of just about anything this year. So, you're seeing it. You're seeing it play out, and that that fight and that brotherhood, that all of that is goes into the idea that there's not going to be a lot of focus issues this year. I think they're everyone's kind of pulling in the same direction, and it sure seems like they are. Everyone's gonna. It's going to be a weird year. It's going to be a deeply weird year with a lot of probably uneven performances. But if they are this focused already, that's going to help them. Perhaps have a few fewer weird results than other teams will.
Yeah, the one thing you can control is your focus and your preparation. And you don't have to worry about anybody else. Just go do what you do. You mentioned the brotherhood. Sean Wade, when he announced that he was coming back again on ESPN on Thursday, was wearing a shirt, the brotherhood shirt. And it would have been a real bad scene, Tom, if he's wearing a brotherhood shirt and then says, "Yeah, no, I'm still opting out." But it was Justin Fields said, the brotherhood is real. And he talked about seeing other teams where the players continue to opt out, and uh, just shows with Wyatt Davis and Sean Wade coming back. He's, quote, "We want to play. They're not forcing us to play." And this is a group of players who walked off the last time they walked off a football field. We've got the pictures.
Mhm.
They were not a happy group. They were devastated, and they knew. I think they all knew that the better team was walking off without the win in that game, and they have plenty to prove. And prove to the world, I guess, is one thing they want to do, but also just prove to Clemson, most especially. And so you just the opportunity to have that, you can see they appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know if there will be a more focused group in the country because they had it taken away, and this was something that they were looking forward to since probably the very second they walked off the field against Clemson last year. And this is something they're fighting for, working towards, would never let happen again. And then didn't even get a chance to not defend themselves, but to gain revenge because it was taken away by the Big Ten, and now they have it back. I yeah, it's there will be rust and things like that. I think for everybody, but I find it hard to imagine there will be a team more prepared or better prepared in the Big Ten or maybe nationally than these guys.
Right. And if they can come out better prepared this summer, um, and this fall, I mean, this is the old cliche that we've talked about before. Um, you can't win the national championship in the summer, but you can lose it. Well, this does not seem like a team that's going to lose the national championship in the summer, either through just kind of going through the motions during practices the next month, or guys doing stupid stuff and going out to parties, and like there are going to be teams that have issues like that, and you're seeing outbreaks on teams, and we don't know specifics on exactly where those came from, but it sure just doesn't seem it sure seems like Ohio State's going to do exactly what they need to do to not have that happen to them. And the testing protocols in place, and the stuff that Ohio State's doing to kind of keep players as safe as possible, and then the players being bought into that, all of those processes, all of those protocols, that's just the safety end of things. And it seems like the on-field end of things, which is still feels weird to be talking about, like you're hearing people ask football questions, it's like, oh yeah, asking about like specific wide receivers, that's right, that's a thing you can do with football players. They don't just have to talk about administrative procedural things. That's so interesting.
Tell me
But
more
yeah,
about the red tape.
yeah, exactly. Tell me, tell me more about your change.org petition. Oh, that's right. We can talk about football now. I forgot. Okay, cool. Um, Wide receivers. Which ones are those again? It's been a while since we've talked about them. But yeah, no, it has definitely been. I think this is shaping up to be a year where this is going to be as strong a test of program culture as you're going to find. And you're seeing that manifest itself right now in guys who are opting out versus guys who are coming back. And you're going to see that in terms of programs that are going to really be bought in and working hard and hitting the ground running over the next 5 weeks as they're getting ready for the season. And then programs that are not having guys doing stupid stuff like going to house parties. There are going to be programs that have great stuff happen this fall and come out, it's going to look ragged at times. It's going to look rusty at times, but they're going to be a million miles ahead of other teams. And then you're going to have programs where you're going to have players going out to clubs and doing stupid stuff, and you're going to have outbreaks. And this is like the ultimate test of program culture. And for a program that is as strongly built on culture and that has professed and sort of walked out the idea that the culture is extremely strong, like Ohio State has, that shapes up as one more thing that is probably in their favor this fall, as opposed to a lot of other schools.
And Ryan Day has said that, the team that comes through this the best, or who handles it the best, will come through it the best. And he believes the team has become closer because of it. I would agree with him based on what we talked to, what the players had to say today. And Justin Fields, one of the first questions he was asked was, what has he learned about himself? And basically, like, seeing what he could do as an individual to kind of bring about the return of football, that gives him more confidence to just, like, he feels like he could take control of the entire team right now. And he talked about spending more time with the defense because he didn't necessarily feel that way last year with the defense. Now he can pretty much set anybody aside and sit them down, and because he is one of the definitive leaders of the Buckeyes, and he did something like I would see JT Barrett trying to bring the Big Ten back, like talking to Good Morning America, doesn't matter. Just let me get out there and talk to somebody and make this known. And this was some serious leadership on Justin Fields' part, and you wouldn't expect it to just suddenly end now that, hey, we finally got what we wanted, party time. And so no, it won't be that. You mentioned specific football questions. He was asked about the freshman receivers. He said they've been phenomenal, the most polished freshmen he's seen with his eyes, and it gets him excited. I asked about, well, what about your veterans? And he mentioned, there's going to be plenty of highlights. I wanted to ask an actual football question because I knew it was just going to be everything else. I thought, I'll just try to get a wide receiver story in here that I can write, and then write off of all of these other questions as well. Because, yeah, I mean, it's football back. Football is back. We can start talking about it now, and eventually, I don't know at what point, Tom, we won't even talk about the season being canceled and brought back. We will just be talking about how are the linebackers looking. We noticed Justin Hilliard was with the ones and Baron Browning was with the two sliding down, and just getting into the real intricacies, as Homer Simpson would call it. And I'm looking forward to that. When do you think that will happen?
Boy, I'm looking forward to the time that we get to watch practice and notice things like that people are working with the ones. That should be sometime around, I'm going to guess either middle of next week or the spring of 2022, one or the other of those two dates. And I'm excited to find out which one it is. I have my suspicions, but I'm excited to find out for sure.
Yeah, people have been posting on the boards. Are you guys going to get to go to practice? No. We will not. We will not be seeing any practice. The only practice we will be seeing is the same practice you are seeing when they post videos from their Ohio State football Twitter account. They are not going to let anybody in that building who doesn't absolutely need to be there, including people who've been working there for years and years, who are now working from home remotely because they are taking things so seriously. And I'm guessing maybe, Tom, what we can do is sneak into the softball stadium and shoot some photos from there of the practice fields. We may get in serious trouble for that, but you know what? There's going to be a lot of forgiveness this year because 2020 is a crazy year. And as we're being hauled out by the police, can't we just be like 2020, right? And then they just let us go.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've all established this as a year to be showing people a lot of grace, and things change. I'm sorry, my understanding was that this was okay. Has that changed recently? I apologize. A lot of things have changed this year. I'm sure it won't happen again. I apologize. When's your next practice? I picture picturing you up there in like a ghillie suit, but maybe like the pom pom guy. So you're blending in with the Ohio State red seats. Like, yeah, I think, frankly, other than the fact that we're recording this conversation and are about to broadcast it out to, I don't know, millions of people. How many listen right now? I don't remember. But other than that, I don't see any flaw in this plan at all.
Because I'll be up in the ghillie suit, up in the stands, and the coaches will be like, "What's that?" Because what am I camouflaged against? And some other coaches will be like, "I don't see anything." Um, so we'll see how that goes. There is one little trick that you can also do is just park and then listen, because you basically get play by plays during
Hmm.
practice, which is
Yes.
sometimes fun as we're over there for whatever reason, and you're like, oh, Anderson Russell just had another interception. Uh, that would have been a few years ago.
It's important for Jeff Okuda to hydrate. Okay, let me. That's big. What will
That's
that
just
tell
stuff
us
you get.
about the depth chart this year?
Yes.
Who's to say? Yes, that's
Hmm.
Quinn Temple, one of the ops guys for Ohio State. He's on the mic during practice and is always reminding players to hydrate, finish the drill, 4 to 6 A to B, the all of these types of things. All of which extremely instructive in terms of us being able to construct a an accurate depth chart.
That's how we're going to have to figure out the depth chart. But then you don't even know, is well, was it ones versus twos there? Was it ones versus ones? Were players just why was Cameron Brown defending Elijah Gardner there? What's going on there? Is something happening? And so yeah, there's the only reason to do that would be to say, hey, I Josh Proctor had 4 interceptions in practice today. Really? How'd you find that out? Well, I was just hanging out listening. Um, who was he going against? I don't know. I just know he had 4 interceptions. Can't that be enough information for you?
Who was he going against? The offense. Duh.
How many of
What?
those were Justin Fieldses?
Mm, mm.
Uh,
Between 0 and 4, I would say. I mean, again, I wasn't there, but that was my assumption. Yeah, it's this is this is going to be such an interesting year because we're gonna. I feel like normally we have a pretty good sense coming out of spring ball where things stand with a lot of guys. We obviously didn't get that this year. We generally have a pretty good sense during just not even just the spring game, but we'll get to watch a spring practice or two. Really get a good sense for where things are, maybe some different things they're interested in trying. We got one spring practice, and it was the first spring practice, and I remember walking out of there and going, well, we know a little more than when we walked in here, but we'll obviously find out more the next time we get to watch them practice. Which so turns out the next time we get to watch them in person could be October 24th, give or take, and I can't imagine they're going to be putting out a ton of really detailed practice reports. That doesn't seem like something that's probably going to happen in the lead up to whatever that first game is. So I, I'm honestly kind of excited because this is going to be one of these like Christmas morning, like you're going to find out the surprise. It's like when you have a kid and some people do the find out the gender in advance and do the gender reveal party. We just did the have it be a surprise, and it's like that day it's like, what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? Is it gonna be a boy? Is it gonna be a girl? Are they going to switch to a 3-4? I don't know. We're going to find out together. It's going to be exciting. Yeah, it's. I'm there. I think there's a lot of things that I think we probably have a pretty good sense for. I think I could put together an offensive depth chart and feel pretty darn good about it. There's some stuff on defense that I'd be interested to see. I think I have a sense for where everyone's going to be and what they're probably going to try, but you got a new defensive coordinator. What is Kerry Combs going to do this fall? Like, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I have a sense that I know what they're going to do and where they're going to have guys, but we could come out of fall camp, have that first game, and have some real legitimate surprises, which is not that's not something that really happens anymore. Which is, I mean, that's kind of interesting and kind of exciting.
I want to outlaw the pyrotechnic based gender reveals for obvious reasons.
Mm, hmm.
But if there was like a gender reveal, surprise reveal for the Ohio State offense, I'm thinking, surprise, it's Jameson Williams. We've seen him a little bit in the highlights, and Ryan Day mentioned him as one of the top three receivers, or mentioned three receivers
Mhm.
the other day, and he was one of those three. And we've been told that he's right now the number one at X, with Garrett Wilson at the, or yes, number one at X, Garrett
Yes.
Wilson at H, Chris Olave at Z. Those three are, I'm looking forward to that. Defensively, if there's a surprise, it's because there are so many knowns,
Mhm.
but would a Cameron Brown or a Seven Banks fit in there, because they were your fourth and fifth corners last year, or is it surprise it's Josh Proctor? He played quite a bit, or Tom, surprise it's Court Williams.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a surprise as Court Williams. It could be surprise Javonte Jean-Baptiste is starting opposite Zach Harrison, not Tyreek Smith. It could be, who is starting opposite John Wade? Is it that Seven Banks and Cameron Brown are both starting, and one of them's in the slot? I mean, these are all possibilities. I think that are, and guess what? We're going to have a bunch of shows to talk about this before the season starts. My operating assumption is it's a Wade, Brown, Banks three-man rotation outside, and like a Marcus Williamson inside. That's my operating assumption right now. And Josh Proctor's the deep safety, but you know, this could be a legitimate surprise. And I mean, you went through the starting guys at wide receiver, sort of what it looks like right now. Did you notice who was the first name? This falls into reading way too much into things that I probably should not read way too much into. Justin Fields was asked about the freshman wide receivers. He named all four freshman wide receivers. Did you notice which freshman wide receiver he named first?
I believe it was our guy Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Jackson Smith and Jigba. Justin Fields, Buckeye Weekly listener, confirmed. Yes. Facts only.
That's right. And that you mentioned the one practice we got to see this year, we left that thinking he's the best player on the field. he was incredible. And now to have that confirmed by Justin Fields, who may know a little bit more about his receivers than we do, but yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm just, it's almost like we haven't been able to, just you and I covering the team, like appreciate the fact that now we finally get to see all this stuff we've been wanting to see, because and no, it's not going to be the 12, 13, 14 games of this just incredible offense of the passing offense and the receivers, but 9, 10, 11 games, it's going to be an acceptable consolation with what we're going to be able to see from these guys. So I'm happy that things are back. Tom, are you okay with this, with the idea of football returning?
This may surprise you, but to me, the increase in available football games for us to watch this fall from 0 to 9, I'm going to view that as a positive, both as a personal, just entertainment perspective thing, but also from a content perspective. I feel like that's probably pretty win-win for us. Just, 0 is not the ideal number of football games to play in a year. 15 would be great, as it could have, as LSU had last year. 15 games to cover would be ideal. 9 plus maybe a couple playoff games. 11, yes. 11, much like in math class, 11 is greater than 0. So
But
yes,
Tom,
I'm going to take that.
if you think 0 is bad, that is no way to get a job with USA Today or The Athletic. Um, you're actually in favor of games being played? How dare you?
I did enjoy one of my favorite traditions during our call today. There was we were all instructed. There was a number of people waiting to ask questions. Please ask one question each. And right at the end, one of the national guys came on, not only asked two questions, but asked two questions that had already been asked. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
All right, Tom. I think we should probably end it here. We're just nice little recap of the day's events, which we are very happy to provide, and we'll continue to do so, because again, football talk when there's actual football is a lot easier to do, frankly,
Yes.
and more
Yeah.
entertaining.
Yeah, we had not been planning on doing a show today, and got an email this morning about interviews with Justin Fields and Jonathan Cooper. I was like, all right, we should do a show, because talking about football turns out talking about football is actually kind of fun. Who knew?
Who knew?
I had forgotten. I miss talking about rapid response testing and administrative protocols and you know the Big Ten's bylaws and whether they had been followed closely. I'm gonna miss that era of this podcast, but I think I'm gonna put on a brave face and we can march forward and from here on perhaps focus more on the football element of the football podcast that we do.
You could create playlists, like if you're ever in like a down mood and you're tired of listening to Morrissey or Elliott Smith or whatever, and you really need something to bring you down. Just go back and listen to the podcast from this spring and summer, and then you can just feel bad and get those blues out, and then you can be happy again afterwards. I recommend, if you're ever feeling bad, just listen to one of our podcasts and feel a little bit worse, and then eventually you'll feel fine. And that's what we're here for. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Thank you for reading BuckeyeScoop.com. If you're not yet a member, and we're going to keep saying this because right now is the time, and become a member. Ask those people in your neighborhood who are members, and they will tell you it's well worth the price of admission. So check that out. Become a member. If people would have been members, the members know, you wouldn't have had to wait on the Wyatt Davis news. You wouldn't have had to wait on the Sean Wade news. You'd been up to speed on all this Big Ten stuff, the return. And there's all kinds of insights like that on the site daily, on the Ask the Insiders message board, which we don't always put on the front page because there's a place for stuff like that. And so come check us out. You will not regret it. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys later.